give yourself a break. You cannot cover everything. You cannot. But information is power. Like when my father died, my mother absolutely, really, really struggled because she didn't know how to do any of this shit. Up to a certain point, I'm a believer in kismet. The things that are going to happen to you are going to happen to you. Like the things that happen to me, there's a reason they happen to me. And maybe that reason is that I then come sit here and talk about it. So women don't think it's because they're a failure. I'm clearly not a failure. And yet all of that happened to me.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is what it is as well.
I'm Shreya Parekh, and you're listening to Empower Her, the podcast for busy women aged 35 and beyond. If you're feeling stuck and unfulfilled with your health and wealth, get ready to be empowered to take action. My guests and I will be providing you with knowledge, resources, and ideas to help you broaden your perspectives, learn more about yourself, and define your path to live your absolute best life. Be sure to hit that follow button to stay tuned with Empower Her and check out the valuable free resources available on the website to support your journey. How do you transform your life from the adversities that might come your way? Join me with Geeta Sidhu-Robb, a remarkable entrepreneur and wellness advocate who completely transformed her life. After facing the devastating challenges of divorce and homelessness, she founded the award-winning Nosh Detox. A 5-time winner of the Entrepreneur and Businesswoman of the Year award, Geeta built her formidable reputation in the health and nutrition industry, with Gwyneth Paltrow as one of her first clients. Retraining from a lawyer to a health and wellness coach for professional women, Geeta has worked with world-famous clients like the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, Nadia Swarovski, and Duchess. Her motto, anything is possible. If you can see it, you can do it. If you can dream it, you can make it happen. Get ready to be inspired to take action. Geeta, welcome to the Empower Her podcast. It's great to have you on. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I know you are super energetic about empowering women. So I would really love for you to talk a lot about that today. Could you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your journey from where you are to what you're doing now? That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful. My name's Geeta Sidhu-Robb, and I journey up to here. I've been around a while. I'm a lawyer, an ex-lawyer, because Indian, and I became an entrepreneur. Well, in terms of life-changing events, my first child was allergic to one of the injections he was given, and developed asthma, eczema, and anaphylaxis as a result. And I had my first child very young. I was in my 20s. And that was just life-changing because it changed everything, because he was in hospital every week. He had cardiorespiratory arrest and died and had to be resuscitated because he reacted to some food and was in a coma for a week. And it's kind of really life-changing, that stuff. And that I had to then work. And I grew up in a house where I'd never cooked and I'd never done with help in the house. And I had to kind of learn how to feed him. But luckily, the way we eat as Indians was very effective because he was allergic to dairy, gluten, fish, egg, nuts, and all this stuff. It was really a drama. So that led to one career. And also just not being able to stay at work because I was in hospital 1 night, 2 nights a week. And then I'd come home not having slept and have to go to work. And I would find myself sitting on the floor fast asleep thinking, God, I was supposed to be at work 2 hours ago. So that was difficult. And then I then had my other 2 kids and I had a very bad divorce. We had built this huge business and I had walked out because it was a very unpleasant marriage. And I was like, just send me the money I've made type thing, because we had built this thing together. Weirdly, he didn't. And we ended up homeless and penniless. And we started to live on £14. We had to live on £14 a day. It's what we had. And my parents were very unhappy. My mother was very unhappy because she was like, that's really stupid of you. Go back to him. And I was like, we wouldn't be safe if we went back. So we didn't. And we started again and we built up from there. And a girlfriend gave me a room and we lived with her, bless the woman, poor woman's husband. I still to this day can't quite look him in the eye because we stayed there for 6 months.
Wow.
And because my ex launched quite a campaign kind of so he was like, if you're not coming back, I'm going to destroy you type thing. So it was really difficult. So he bankrupted me and we had a lot of joint assets. So these things were quite easy to do. Anyway, we rebuilt out of that. And that's when I set up Nosh Detox and I became an entrepreneur because it was the only way I could make money. And the only thing I knew how to do was to make people healthier. So I did. And that was what I did for a living. And Nosh has been, ran for 16 years. And then here we are today. Clock's given a jump.
Wow, what a journey. I think it feels like, the challenges you went through at that time, obviously, is it your son?
Yeah.
Son, yeah. So from your son having all these allergies and then having to go through this really horrible, difficult divorce and being homeless, would you say really pushed you was that the switch where you had to empowered to do something with your life because you were forced to, you had to?
I mean, I do wonder. I mean, because this happens to a lot of women, right? I'm not unusual that this happened to me.
No.
The only thing that's probably unusual about me is the way I fought it. Because I was not going to accept that. I mean, because when I remember the part where walking out on this immensely wealthy relationship, we had built a huge empire worth multi-millions and I had my own plane, my home in Monaco. So one day I had a Ferrari and the next day I was homeless. And that, I do wonder, but I think it was a gradual thing. Firstly, I'm an immigrant. And I think the fact of being an immigrant meant that I had a drive to fight. Secondly, I'm pretty sure it's because I'm Sikh and, that's kind of part of the DNA of fighting. And I was brought up to do that and not to accept injustice because it was kind of really how my father brought us up. So that was there. What you then do with that, my biggest issue was that I thought what had happened was so unfair to my children. And I did not want my children to suffer more than they already had. They had gone from this wonderful, amazing, safe life to sleeping in one bed while I slept on the floor and not having anything. We couldn't, even buying shoes was so hard. We had to rotate who got shoes because we didn't have the money for shoes. We couldn't do anything because we didn't have any money to do anything. And so it's really hard to always tell your children, no, we can't because we can't afford it. No, we can't because we can't afford it. And they come off their private plane. So they don't know anything that's happening. And I was like, and I grew up extremely wealthy. And so I was like, I am absolutely buggered if this choice is going to make my children's lives worse. And also because my ex would say things like, if you just come back, it'll all go away. And I was like, yeah, I had a few feelings about that, which we won't repeat. And I thought, no, really no, I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I am going to do this differently. And my one flag in the ground was that the children were going to stay at their private school, no matter, which is a really stupid decision when you've got £14 a day. It just is, because without that, the amount of money I've made over the years, we'd be intensely wealthy. But that was my commitment, that I will change everything, but I won't take your friends away. And so, that I think I've always been driven by the sense of unfairness. And so for my children, to me, that was deeply unfair. So I was not going to make it happen. So then I was going to do everything else from that.
Yeah. I suppose, that's the lawyer in you as well. Maybe that's why that career choice with
right. Everything is for a reason. You look back and you're like, wow, that really helped.
Yeah. There's a lot of women out there who do, they may have their finances in order, but it's almost like there's that extra added layer that you need to really think about, because you've gone from, you were brought up in a wealthy environment, and then that continued, and then all of a sudden that just went like this, and then you had to build that up again. Now, I know going from that to this can be really challenging and extremely difficult, but I know you said that, you know, with the private school and things like that, but there must be other reasons why you felt that, because for a man to take your power away and to take your wealth away, that you jointly, you know, you contributed to that as well. What made you feel like you had to say no? Because it would have been easy for you to go back, I'm assuming, to him, because he was offering that to you.
Because he was being a dick. You know, I mean, he was
Yeah.
being a dick. You know, I hate being pushed. I absolutely hate being pushed. I won't do the opposite because that's stupid and I'm highly intelligent, but I hate being bullied. Hate it with I hate people being bullied. I hate me being bullied. I hate all of the thing about being bullied. So, you know, there's two things that always come out of this. One, people always call, when people are talking about this, it's like, oh, you were a gold digger, you married money. And I'm like, no, I came out of university. My father had said, I pay for you to go through school and then you're on your own. So we had to, you know, we had to hustle. I worked as a waitress, I worked in shops, I've done all that stuff. So it wasn't that I went from money to money. I got degrees, which I paid for, and then my father paid for my first degree. And then anything after that. So I worked really, really hard through my 20s to build this. And I went to some really horrendous places and did some really sheerly stupid stuff, trying to make, you know, I moved to Moscow in 96, 94, 93 to, you know, really difficult things. So it didn't come easy. I worked really hard for it. But the thing was that when I came, the second thing that I get told a lot is this, that why didn't I go back? And the other worst thing was that there were people who would marry me. Right? There were people that were happy to marry. My mother's like, nobody will ever have you. And I was like, well, there's a queue out the damn door. There were people that were happy to marry me and look after me and, you know, keep me and do all those things. So that was available. I just thought that, firstly, I would not go back to him because it wasn't safe. And it was my children that were like, why are we here? My son said to me, why are we here? You know, he's going to hurt us. And you can't hear your son saying that and then dismiss it. You can't. So that was that. And I just felt like going back after all that pain, it's like giving up smoking. You've got to give up whatever it is that you're giving up. And it's so painful to give it up. And then you negate all that hard work you've done. I would have had to have taken my self-respect and my self-worth and just thrown it in the toilet in order to go back. And money wasn't good enough for that. And I just thought, well, why can't I make it? My rule was that I wasn't going to sell my body. That was the only kind of rule. Like I wasn't going to lie or cheat or whatever. But I always say it, you know, because for women, it's a really strong option.
Yeah.
And if you're an attractive woman, it's a very strong option. And I have never judged anyone who wants to do that. You should 100% do what it is that you need to do. I did not want to do that. But I'm just also very bloody minded. I just was not willing to have somebody else pick me up and scoop me up. And then I would have to do what they wanted.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I know that people, and my son, when I was with the girl's father, he was his stepson because he was from another man, my first and second husband. And he was not always nice to my son. And I thought, if I get another man here, these are not his children. And that is going to be a place where my children are going to suffer. And we're always going to have to go, sorry. And I didn't want my kids to have to ever apologize for their existence when my son had such a hard time with it. Because every time he fought with me, he would attack my son as a result of it. So it was just, I think you have to choose. I chose not to.
Yeah.
I don't think the easy way is always the easy way.
Yeah. So on the wealth side of things, you know, I think it's really important for women to have their finances in check and make sure that, you know, they're empowered to, yes, whether you have a partner, you're married or you've got a boyfriend, whatever your situation is, you still have your own money and you use that money to make more money and whatever. So what are your thoughts on that?
I was going to say, so I knew that was going to come up because that's another thing that always comes up.
Yeah.
And I have people, because I talk about this a lot on social media, because I'm really very open about every way I've screwed up, because I think it's very important to be open about it. Or it's a choice I've made. And people are like, why didn't you look after your money? And you know, I found the other day these diaries I had when I was 21 and I had just started my first job, and I had my savings account, and I had, you know, like when I was 24, I had £7,000 of Vodafone stocks, you know, and I wasn't really earning that much as a bloody trainee lawyer. And I did all the right things. I've always saved. You know, and it's funny because with my kids, when they get money now, I'm like, okay, this goes in savings. My kids always talk to me about how I've always done that.
Yeah.
What happened though was that I grew up in a culture where my husband and I had a joint account. We made money, we built a business, we put money into this account, and we bought all these things, and you know, the house was in everybody's name, and I checked all of those things. Everything you're meant to do, I did. But you know, you assume people are going to be normal when you have these conversations. And when you've got someone who's hell-bent on not being normal, there's nothing you can do. He lied, cheated, stole, I mean, everything. Like, he took my car to buy me a new car, and he had to just replace the car. And when he came back, he put the car in his name. I don't even know how he did it. And he did it. And then, so the bank accounts that were joint, when I went to take money out of them, they were empty. You know, and when you went to the house that had the assets, he would turn up in court. I mean, I pursued him in court for 3, 4, 5 years. I'd turn up in court, and the documents showing they were in both our names didn't exist anymore. And so they were all company-owned things. And I'm a really intelligent woman, and it happened to me. So you can say all of these things, and you can think all of these things, and you will just meet an outlier who will come and drive over you with a big Mack truck, huge fucking truck, and destroy you. I remember watching The Tinder Swindler, and I had to stop halfway.
Yeah.
I had to literally stop halfway because I couldn't breathe. I actually couldn't breathe because I was like, this is almost my life. And it's the most horrendous, you know, you spend so much time with shame and guilt and pain and, you know, like, could I have done it better? Could I have been, I mean, I don't know. I was having babies, and in a marriage, you're doing this, you know, we have these things, you know. Nowadays, I would look at you and I'd go, that's really cute. This is my bank account, and whatever's happening there is happening over there. But you learn that. This is not conversations we had 15 years ago. They just aren't.
Yeah, yeah. What would your advice be to women then that, you know, that are in partnerships or married, whatever, in terms of money? Because, you know, we all go into, no, I shouldn't say the word all, like, but a lot of women go into marriages and partnerships with men and just assume that it's going to be okay. Not to say that all men could do this or all partners will do this, but in terms of providing a safety, I think it's really important, judging by, you know, what happened with you. You need to have something else. And what would your advice be to women to have that? How do they go about doing that?
Do you do that? Do you have a separate?
No.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. This is what I mean. This is why I'm asking you. It's like, I feel like a lot of women don't really think about these things, because I don't know, you just always think, oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. You know, I trust him. Anything can happen. You know, you can trust someone and anything can happen, and something might happen to them. They might get ill. They might pass away. Then what? Is everything in order?
Yeah. So that's really important. You know, it's really important to make sure that you've got your living will. So if you're in a coma, somebody can work out. In fact, I was just thinking when I was looking at you, I don't know if my living will's up to date. I think it's not up to date, actually. So that's something I'm going to do. You should do the legalities of it. But like my goddaughter, when she got married about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and I was like, okay, you know what happened to us. What are you going to do about it? Right? And you need to look at this and this and this. My daughter has just, you know, that she's just getting serious with her boyfriend, and very sadly for my Indian heart is living with him, which, you know, just traumatizes me completely. But there we all are. And I'm like, so how does the money work? What are you going to do? And I'm like, you have seen what happened to us. You lived it. Are you having these conversations about what is going to happen? And the trouble with women is we're very externally motivated. We are motivated to get approval externally because that's how we're brought up. One thing that I say to women is, like the children's education, isolate that money. Really isolate that money. Put money for the children's education in a completely separate account and make that an account that is either in joint control or in the mother's. And most men aren't going to be very happy with that, but isolate the education so that, do the things that you can do. Put that on one side. Make sure that what you're doing is in terms of your house, that your name's on the documents. Make sure that if you are making money, certain amounts the trouble with it is that what that means is you've got to look at your marriage and think, what would happen if I didn't trust you? And that is a terrible way to have to live with someone. Yeah. It is better, I think, because men are not bad. I don't think that. And I'm very unusual in terms of my circumstances where I'm not a man basher, because I really don't. I never almost bash men because I just don't think it's about men. I think my ex was a specific example of psychopathy, but that's just my ex, I don't think it's all men. And like the partner I have had for the last 15 years is a really wonderful, amazing, kind man who has paid hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds to his ex-wife. And I've watched him do it,
Yeah.
But I do think that these are conversations we need to have with our husbands and spouses and partners, where you say things like, I'm very clear about it. I'm like, listen, I have trust issues. I have very clear trust issues. What happens if you die tomorrow? What happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? And I now have those conversations all the time. But I also think this, give yourself a break. You cannot cover everything. You cannot. But information is power. Like when my father died, my mother absolutely, really, really struggled because she didn't know how to do any of this shit, but it's a different generation, which really irritated me because she didn't want to listen to me because it had to be a guy telling her. So I was tempted to go hire a man and just have him say the things to her that I was, but that didn't do that. But. So, up to a certain point, I'm a believer in kismet. The things that are going to happen to you are going to happen to you. Like the things that happen to me, there's a reason they happen to me. And maybe that reason is that I then come sit here and talk about it. So women don't think it's because they're a failure. I'm clearly not a failure. And yet all of that happened to me.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is what it is as well. But just set up what you can. Set up what you can.
Yeah. And you're so right. It's so important to have those conversations with the person you're with, because if you don't start those conversations, you won't even know you need to know what their reaction is.
Exactly that.
Because, what if they start becoming like, I don't want to talk about this, or whatever, or start being negative about it or getting angry or whatever, then hold on a minute.
And prepare. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'll have those conversations. It's like, completely. Let's do this. How do we cover this? What do we do with this? Let's make sure you feel good about this, and those are very different conversations.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You're right. It is about, I have had those conversations, but to what depth, I suppose, to what detail, because it's not just high level conversations. You've got to go into the detail, especially if you're in a serious long-term partnership or you have children or the elderly, you may have parents to look after, whatever that might be, that you have to have the conversation, and then you can know what the reaction is, I suppose. Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk a bit about women being unsure of what they want and how to get what they want. I know you've been through a lot of different phases in terms of, you've been a lawyer, and then, you've built up this business from scratch, like literally from scratch. How did you know? I know with you, your circumstance was different. You had to do something because, you were in that position of being homeless, and you were experimenting with different things to do with health. But there are lots of women out there, they're just going about their day, 9 to 5, going to work, coming back, cooking, eating, sleeping, and repeat. And a lot of women aren't really thinking about, is this what I want? Is this it? Is this my life? What's your advice for women like that?
I mean, the thing is, women don't ask for what they want because we are brought up, trained to not ask for what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not an oops. We are literally brought up without ever being asked what we want. I remember my best friend saying to me, "What do you want to eat?" And I'm like, "I have a choice." I was like, literally, and I was like, damn, if I don't even know what I want, where it comes down to the food I'm eating, what the hell do I know about my bigger choices?
Yeah.
And I always say I was saved by two things. The fact that my husband was so awful, because if he'd been marginally better, I would have stayed and turned into those women that drink from lunch onwards to make it more bearable, who I definitely don't judge. And because I had the kids, because they forced me. I did things for them I would never have done just for me, right? Because, so I think that, firstly, if we are ever going to have this conversation, understand that you have no muscle that helps you to understand what you want. None. Because you're not brought up to do it. You don't have it as a muscle. And people will get very pissy about this. I have the younger generation say, "You're not really a feminist, are you?" And I'm like, it's not about that. I've worked with 21,000 women in the last sort of 15 years. So I had a specialist skill in this. And I coached them into understanding how to ask for what they want. And so you've got to be in a place where, if it's not even what do I want, it's how bad do I feel. The judgment of whether or not you are getting what you want is how bad you feel every day. Do you feel bad, or and bad is in many different emotions. There's anger, there's guilt, there's shame, there's depression. Those are emotions that are telling you that you are not living the life that you want, because you have moved so far away from the barometer of what you really need as a human, that these emotions are telling you. And when you're in a place doing what you do want, there's a sense of joy and happiness and calm and peace.
Right.
So firstly, that's how you judge whether you're living a life you want or don't want. Because there's nothing wrong with I work really, really hard. I will happily do 10, 11-hour days, but I love what I do. So there's a difference in that, and then I have to remind myself to go and get a social life, to go and do those things, because otherwise I'll happily sit here the whole bloody day. And then I'll wake up 11 hours later thinking, fuck, my body doesn't work. So, so the working isn't the issue, but are you happy? And also the happiness, even judge your happiness, because you're trained to be happy if you're pleasing someone else. You're not trained to be happy if you're pleasing yourself. So the negativity and the depth of those negative emotions is how to understand. And so when you have those emotions, then you're not living what you want. Then you can start to unpack what you hate about what you do every day. Because we'll still do them. But you've got to understand if you love or you hate it. And then we can go to the next step. So it's a very linear, logical, step-by-step thing.
If you hate your job, and I don't know many people that really love their job.
Really?
I feel like I've gone through different stages of my life. In my 20s, my priorities were very different. What I wanted was different. I will never know whether what I wanted in my 20s was really what I truly wanted, or whether I was just following the typical steps of what society kind of expected of me, which is go to university, get a degree, go to work your way up, and then get married, have kids, and have babies, and the kids are babies, and then retire and that kind of thing. We're kind of ingrained to do that kind of thing, and I feel like the steps you take in your 20s and 30s are different to what you start taking in your 40s and 50s onwards. Things change, and especially for me, like when you have children, for me, things changed when I had kids, big time, because I felt like the world wasn't really set up for women to have kids. I mean, you experienced it, right? You could not go to work properly because your son was very, very ill. Yeah.
Well, there was no accommodation made for the fact of how women live, which is why I do what I do today. Life does not take into account that 50% of the world needs to do these things if we want the world to continue. We're made to feel bad about it, and we're made to feel wrong about it, and it's just incredibly stupid, and it's inbuilt, infrastructurally inbuilt. So Yeah. But so if you come back to what do I want, you've got to teach yourself first that you want. And the way you teach yourself if you want and don't want is because of how bad you feel. Then when you've worked out, okay, I feel terrible, and that's not normal, it's not acceptable. Put up with it.
What do you mean by those feelings of I feel terrible? I know you talked about feeling angry and things like that. And what about your physical body? Can you be feeling ill? Can you be feeling
100%? But usually with women with these negative emotions, they come. We coined a phrase which I invented and I've used all the time. One of the ways to see is stress fat. It's the fat that sits around your stomach and your upper thighs, and that you just suddenly comes and you can't get rid of it. You can't exercise it away. You can't diet it away. And it comes in perimenopause as well, but it comes, and the lack of being able to have babies, right? Because immense amounts of stress obviously is very, very high levels of cortisol. And cortisol affects three things. It affects your sleep, it affects your digestion, and it affects your fertility. So if any of those three are wildly disrupted, you are unhappy. You are unhappy. You can be stressed and joyful, and you can be stressed and hate your life. So if one of those three things are happening, you're struggling. And if you're struggling, you need to stop and think, okay, my life sucks right now. What is it that sucks? How do I work it? You've got to see it. I've always thought that the clarity of understanding the problem is 90% of the solution.
Right. Okay. So can you talk about the stages of really kind of discovering who you are and where you want to get to? And like, what advice would you give if someone wanted to, they knew that something wasn't right within them and they weren't happy, they were feeling angry, all these things going on for them, what would be the next steps?
The primary problem we have is that we worry that if we stop and look at our life and how much we hate it, we're going to have to change something. And if we change something, it's going to be really difficult. And we might have to give up the partner or the husband, and we can't afford it, and we can't. That's what stops us changing, right? I had a client who said to me, I don't want to give up smoking. And she was really ill. She said, I don't want to give up smoking because it's the one thing my husband and I do together.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
I mean, she absolutely had clarity. So she was like, you can do anything, but I don't want to give up smoking. And I was like, oh, okay. So you've got to understand that the first fear we deal with, and it doesn't matter if you're famous and you're not famous and you're poor and is I can't disrupt the status quo. And the only way that I can keep the status quo is by being who I am. And who I am is miserable, unhappy, sad, depressed, and I hate my life. But the status quo is more important than I am. And why do you accept that? Because as women, we're brought up to accept it. We're externally motivated, approval motivated. So that's the biggest first step. That's usually when someone calls me, when they can't bear it, when the way they feel is worse than anything else, because the desire to maintain the status quo, like the women that when I walked out on my husband, a lot of 95% of the women that I knew stopped calling me because they did not want to leave their husbands, even though they were unhappy and miserable. And somehow it's catching if I walked out on mine.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's a very normal thing. It's a really, really normal thing, and I'm like, let me not judge. I have enough problems of my own. So you should do what you need to do. Right.
Yeah.
But it's the giving up of the status quo. So what I always say to people when they come in is never, ever give up your status quo, because the lesson you have to learn is where you are today. And if you move the environment and the circumstance, you're just going to repeat it somewhere else. So if anyone's listening and you want to change your life, what I want you to do is not change anything external, because the good and the bad news is this: everything is about you. I have this phrase I love deeply. It's, what if everything is your responsibility, but nothing is your fault? Right? So it's all your responsibility, but none of it's your fault. What does that mean? It means that every single internal change you can make is where you need to start. I don't care about anyone else. Literally people walk in the door going, and I'm like, no. Don't leave your husband. Don't change your job. Don't move house. Don't do any of those things. Let's just work on you. If we can work on what's inside you, you change how you look at the thing, and then the thing changes. It's really very simple.
Yeah.
And it does change. So I am like millions of women. I got screwed over by a guy I was married to, who's the father of my kids, who didn't give me any money, and jumped up and down on my carcass. Really not. So far, so normal. I refused that to be my reality. That's the only unusual thing. Only reason you're talking to me today is because I decided my reality was going to be different.
Yeah.
Otherwise, my story is very normal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way of putting it, actually. You know, changing your environment in terms of, right, I hate my job, I'm just going to get a new job. I hate my husband, I'm going to get a new husband, you know, whatever that might be. Actually, is that going to work? Not really.
So I had a woman came to me about now probably 14, 15 months ago, and she came through one of my other coaching clients, and she came in and she said, you know, I've got this job and I hate my job. I've been here 3-4 months. And it's so annoying, and it's a new company and they won't even pay for my laptop. I couldn't even get my taxi money paid, and I had to go to this appointment. Like, why am I here? And oh my God, and they're so annoying, you know, and this was the conversation.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Lordy. And I love her deeply, but these conversations were so painful because it was always, I hate my job. And I always keep notes, lawyer. And so all these notes were, I hate my job. And so we coach. And it was very funny because it took 12 months from there. We coached for 12 months. And at the end of the 12 months, she is one of only 19 women in the world that is the chair of a NASDAQ listed company.
Wow.
So you can think that change will take you a long time, but I absolutely promise you that and with her, we started with her. It was like, okay, why is this annoying? What can you do about it? You know, and we broke down and unpack what was inside of her. And she literally went from, I hate my job, why won't they pay for my taxi fare, to one of 19 women in the world that are in a NASDAQ listed company. The chair. I mean, I cannot be more proud of this woman. But can you see? So it's whatever you're thinking, however much despair you feel, I really feel for you. But also, it's not the end.
Yeah.
It's like the beginning of the next bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I really do love that, because
So cool.
So much of even my time, I admit, you know, I think I need to, you know, I don't like this, so I need to. Like, it's an external thing.
But I have another, you know, I could have been telling you client stories all the time because it's fun. But I had another client who came in and she goes, I just need to lose weight. I'm like, why? She goes, well, because I'm really unhappy. And I'm like, okay, what's making you unhappy? She's like, just tell me how to lose weight. I'm like, okay, just sit. Let's talk to me. She goes, well, I've got this company and I've set this up, and it was turning over 3-4 million. She put it together. She'd done a management buyout, and she goes, and I have to sell. I'm like, why? She goes, because I can't get my CFO to pay attention. He just is old fashioned and he's terrible and he's not paying attention. And I feel undermined because I'm a young woman and I can't do it anymore. So I've got to sell the company and then we move on. And I was like, what if we got rid of your CFO? How would that work? And she went, oh, but we can't. I'm like, why can't we? She goes, because I don't know how. What if we could? And it was the funniest thing in the world. So this woman came when she was turning over, what did I say, like 3-4 million. And she coached with me for the next, she's still my client, but she coached with me for the next 10 years. And the company turned over 55 million.
Wow.
Because she changed who she was and how she sees herself.
Yeah.
You know? And it is, honestly, I can't tell you what a difference you can make. Because in the person that you are, the things that I have seen people do. I had another woman who came in and she's really unhappy, and she's very, 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 she's a globally famous woman. And I was like, can you, and we're listening to her, and she's just like, oh, you know, and I was like, send me your CV. She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, send me your CV. She goes, I don't have a CV. I'm like, send me your bio. And I get really shirty if you're coaching and you don't send me what I want. So I was like, I don't have this. I'm not having a session with you until, you know, and so she said, oh shit, we're still putting it together. And I'm like, what? Put it together, give it to me. It took her team a week to put it together. She sent me a bio of 6.5 double-sided A4 pages.
Oh my God. Wow.
And I was like, can you see?
Yeah.
How your sense of worthlessness, your sense of whatever. Look, this is proof. Right? Another client who comes in and goes, I just need to lose weight, which is what all women say to me. It just drives me mad. And I'm like, why? Well, I can't go on a date and I can't find a man and I haven't got a relationship. So I think if I lose weight, I will find a man and have a relationship. And I was like, we would need to cut your hair and your nails for you to lose weight because there's no weight left to lose. Like this child is skinny, And it was, she wanted to get promoted at work, but she wasn't getting promoted. She didn't know how to ask for it. She didn't know what to do about it. And she felt trapped. And she felt constantly like she's hitting a ceiling. And it was like, well, what would happen if we talked about promotion? I can't do it. We're not doing it. I don't have to do it. And you're like, ah. But the status quo is I'm inadequate because I'm single. And that took us 9 months. It took us 9 months. And you can change anything. Anything. Yeah. Anything. There's no place that you're in right now that you can't shift. My mother had arthritis and her hands were like this. And we changed her diet and her exercise and her hands, moved perfectly. She turned 90 in February and my mother's a complete penny because she's, Indian woman. And she got a personal trainer as a birthday present. So she's lifting weights.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
There are these stories just to show you nothing is set in stone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also the problem is people want things instantly. Now, it's like, you said, after 9 months, 12 months, 6 months, but people want, I need this within next week. I want to be transformed.
I don't think so. I think it's because you don't have hope. And I think when you don't have hope, you want an instant result. But if I gave you enough hope and I said, listen, I know you don't feel good. I know you're uncomfortable and I know you're worried about what you're going to do next. And I know that you're not sure you can do it. And I know there's a drive in you that thinks you want to do it, but you keep going, no. So the more you push it down, the worse you feel. But if I can give you the hope that you can do it, I've never yet met one person that hasn't stuck with that hope. It's the lack of hope that wants instant gratification.
Okay.
So you replace hope with instant gratification. Oh, how do you get hope? It's very scary to set a commitment because you might fail. And I think that the way that you get hope is by accepting that failure is literally just a part of movement. Look at this. I've come on and talked about so many ways in which I failed.
Yeah.
I regularly will put out the immense numbers of ways in which I failed. I'm so brutally blunt about it.
Yeah.
All the time. I made a promise to God saying, if I get any money, I'm going to build this roof on this orphanage that my friend was trying to raise money for. And he needed £1,000. And I was like, I'll give away 10%. I'll give away 10%. And the next day I got a contract for £10,000. And we were living on £14 a day. £10,000 is life-changing money. Yeah. And I was like, you didn't really think I meant I was going to give £1,000, did you? And God was like, yeah, I actually thought you did mean that. And I was like, no, £1,000. How can I give away £1,000? And I am brutally honest about the fact that, let me tell you how I bargained to not give that money away. I was like, yeah, but I didn't mean it. Yeah, but they don't know I haven't given it to them. I don't care about an orphanage anywhere. No, my children, let me tell you, I bargained, and then I shut the heck up and I gave the money away. It was hard.
Yeah.
I did not feel like giving. I did not feel great. Poverty is soul destroying,
Yeah.
So you have to commit to yourself. That's where you get hope. Commit to yourself. I bet on myself all the time. That's what I bet on. I bet on me. I bet on my commitment to me. I bet in this. I bet on the power that is in me. I'm a very powerful woman, and I really like that about me. And I commit to that every single day. But I didn't know how to be that. And then the more I understood how to be that, I hung onto that with fingers, toes, claws. Never, that is what I won't ever give away. So I bet it's very hard to bet on you. Because if you fail, you then think you're a failure. But I want you to think about it differently. I want you to bet on you. And then every time you fail, see it as proof that you're headed in the right direction, because that was the wrong direction.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love that thought process, because so many of us think in the opposite way and do the complete opposite, and just flipping it and thinking in that way. It's made me think, and in a very different way, and more inward for sure, rather than everything being external and changing external things. If I just buy this thing, or if I just change that, I don't know, that thing on the wall, or whatever it might be, things are going to change. No, things aren't going to change. They really aren't, until things change from within. So I want to talk about Nosh Detox, because I know you built up this amazing company. Can you talk a bit about what it is and how it helps women? I know you have closed it now, but some aspects of it now. But I think it's amazing what you did and how you built that up. I was going to call it an empire, but
I mean, it was. I won
Yeah.
5 Entrepreneur of the Year awards in the process of building that business.
Yeah.
It was an amazing business that doubled in growth every year. And we were the first to do, like, I walk into Pret a Manger and I see those cold pressed juices, and they're there because of me, because we did that, we made that happen. So the reason behind Nosh was very simple. It was just my son couldn't eat anything anyone else could eat, and I wanted to be able to give him food that made him feel normal. That's all it was. So I came from that place. And then what we did is every time somebody came in the door, we never said no. We're like, yeah, okay, let's try it. So we worked with the most interesting people. We've worked with, as I said, the most famous people women in the world. We've worked with cancer patients who are dying. For 5 years, we were sent people to try and help them with their diet. So I've just seen that the human body can do anything. And what we've done now, which is amazing, which I don't know if we can mention it, but we created a community called wcom.world. So it's WCOMM.world. And we've put all the digital library of the content I've created in the last 15 years up in that community. And it's $1 a month to access it, because what we're trying to do is create a global community so that you can be in India, or you can be in Marrakesh, or you can be in Tanzania, and you can afford to go on and have access to a diet program, a keto program, a juice fast. You can do all of that. It's for $1 a month. Because I want there to be as much access to that as you possibly can have anywhere in the world. So the goal behind Nosh, I'm very grateful to Nosh. Nosh put my kids through school. Nosh changed lives. Nosh saved people's lives, and it saved my life. And it's, what we don't want to do today is any of the kind of food delivery or home delivery or anything like that, because it's just a really terrible business to be in terms of cost. And the knowledge is still there. So now I want to make the knowledge available digitally. And it's been great, so it's been a really great exercise.
Is it like a juice, or is it actual food?
We don't do products anymore.
No, as in with the Nosh Detox before, was it a juice?
Both. No, we set up the first home delivery of food that was gluten and dairy free in 2008. We set up the first juice fast in July 2008.
Yeah.
So it was everything.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's what I just wanted to ask that bit, whether it was,
No, we made it and then we sent it.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine. So just to end, what top 3 tips would you give to women that want to feel more empowered and more kind of confident on the things that they want to do going forward in their life? Women that are feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing. I want some change in my life. I want to change things up. What advice would you give?
Go inside. Go into yourself and work out what it is that you like about those things and what you don't like. Because often we want to change something because we want to feel different. But start with the feeling. Start the concept of feeling better. And then what your view will change. It's like being at the bottom of a pit and you feel terrible and you can only see darkness around you. But the minute you change your feeling, it kind of elevates you so you can look over and see the light outside of the pit. And you'll see everything differently when you start to feel better. So literally your only focus is, what are the small things I can do that will make me feel better without blowing up my life? Honestly, do not blow up your life. It's a complete waste of bloody time. Feel better. And then when you feel better, whatever it is you decide to do will be a much easier thing to do. I never once thought, let me go back to my husband, ever. Because I had made those emotional decisions where I was. And then I went on to do the next thing.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Geeta, thank you so much for being on the Empower Her podcast. It's been great to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Empower Her. I hope today's episode has left you feeling inspired and motivated to make a positive difference in your world. Please follow the podcast and share it with anyone who will find it helpful. Until next time, keep striving for positive change and greatness for all women.